deductible.
Let's get to the constitutionality question and the IRS question in just a moment. But I want to go back to you, John Burbank. This is what we were hearing already, and we're going to hear a lot more of. If you impose this high earner income tax, it's going to, discourage companies from moving here, and it's going to be hard for these companies to recruit people. They're going to go, we don't want to move to Washington because of this tax burden. What's your response to that?
Well, Matt didn't mention that one of his partners is Jerry Greenstein, who's a big supporter of this. And Jerry is also a venture capitalist.
At the Madrona
Venture the Madrona
group.
Group. So,
but to the point.
In that respect, I think that is overstated fear. What people want to come to the state of Washington for is the quality of life we have here, the type of public education we have here, the type of higher education institutions we have here, the infrastructure we put into transportation. All those things are based upon public funding. And that's why we need to begin to invest more in education. Matt mentioned that we have enough funding for education. But in fact, if you look at private schools, for example, Villa Academy, something like that, that's where your kids go to school, that's about $15,000 a year for tuition. Now, propose that to about $8,500 for kids in the city of Seattle public schools, and you see that there's a big differential, and that money does make a difference. But the other thing about this is that the League of Education Voters, which is probably the foremost organization working for education reform, is fully in support of this initiative, because the education reform that was voted through by the legislature 2 years ago is going to cost about $1 billion a year at least to make it work. So we need this money to invest in our future and in our kids.
If you just joined us, we're talking about a citizens initiative. It just got approved to be on the ballot this November. It's an income tax on high earners. How do they define high earners? Well, individuals earning more than $200,000, couples earning more than $400,000 would pay a 5% income tax. Individuals with income above $500,000 and couples above $1 million in income would pay a 9% income tax. Initiative 1098 also promises to reduce the state property tax by 20% and eliminate the business and occupation tax for many small businesses. We're talking about it with John Burbank, who you just heard from, who's in favor, and Matt McIlwain, who opposes it. Let's talk a little bit about that constitutional issue, which got raised by Matt just a few moments ago. There are those who say that constitutionally you can't impose an income tax in this state.
Right. So in 1932, the people voted through an income tax initiative by a vote of 2-1. In 1933, the state Supreme Court decided that income was the equivalent of property, and therefore had to abide by the constitutional limitations of the property tax. Now, a lot of policy has changed since then, and in fact, all the precedents that state Supreme Court relied on have been overturned. And in many of the states that had the same sort of ruling have now, like Pennsylvania, now have an income tax. So we believe that if this is passed, that it is definitely constitutional, and it will pass constitutional muster. We also know that the federal government is pretty clear that income taxes are deductible. There's a question about, is this an excise tax, income tax? Well, in fact, excise taxes are also deductible. Your car tabs are deductible from your federal income tax. So it's really no question about the deductibility of this tax from federal income taxes. And frankly, it's only going to affect 3% of the people in the state of Washington. For everyone else, they're going to get a tax break.
Today, if it passes, it'll only affect that percentage. But how do we know that once there's an income tax in place, that that rate will not be lowered? And a lot of people, as you know, are concerned about the fact that it'll eventually be an income tax for everyone.
Well, we don't. We don't have a good track record on that in the state in terms of the legislature.
That's Matt McIlwain, by the way.
Thank you. The legislature, changing things that both are committed to particular purposes, whether it's education and lottery funds, or there's a long track record, unfortunately, of our legislature both changing things that were mandated for specific purposes, as well as to taking something like this, creating an income tax. And by the way, one of the reasons it is unconstitutional is because it's not proportional, which is specific in our Constitution as a state. So taking those and then expanding them out to everybody else over time.
What about that point, John Burbank?
Well, the point is that if you read the initiative, it is very straightforward that any change in thresholds or rates has to be approved by a vote of the people. That is what is in the initiative.
But after 2 years, the legislature can do anything, as I just showed they did with Initiative 960 and overturning it with no accountability to the people, just the legislature doing it.
And I guess my response is that we know the legislature has been incredibly adverse to considering an income tax in themselves, and if they were to do that, they would either put a referendum on the ballot, or if they didn't, we can be sure that there will be a group of citizens that will make it a referendum.
Matt McIlwain, I want to get back to your point about you said that you don't think that this is constitutional. If so, why not just fold your tent and go home, let it pass, and then have it ruled down by the courts?
Well, I think that it's just bad policy as well. I mean, do we really think that it's appropriate policy to tax 3% of our people and introduce something that even the proponents have said the reason we tried to cleverly craft 1098 the way we did is because we thought that was the only way it had a chance of passing, because that's what we're trying to do.
Well, generally, people do put things on the ballot that they think will pass.
But they know that the legislature would never pass, and the people. And by the way, I mean, there's a number of things in what John said earlier on, like the property tax, which, to be clear, is 4% property tax, because the state property tax is only 20% of your property taxes. So a 20% reduction in that is 4%. There's a lot of things that the facts are subtly misrepresented in terms of the benefit of the citizens of Washington State, and we're confident, as the facts and the information about this particular initiative get out, that the folks in Washington State will realize that it's the wrong tax at the wrong time with a broad set of risks that we shouldn't be taking on as a state in terms of solving our real and legitimate tax and economic growth issues.
Let's ask about the timing on this, John Burbank. This has gone to voters before. They voted down an income tax, a different kind of income tax, not a high-earner income tax. So why do you think this is the right time to put this on the ballot? Why do you think this is the right time for this tax?
Well, I think it's the right. I think we need this policy. We need this investment in education. We need this investment in healthcare now. We need to give small businesses an exemption from paying the B&O tax, especially in this recession. We need to give property owners across the board cutting the property tax. And so it's 5%. As I said, it's $200 per average household in the city of Seattle. For Matt, it'll be about $700 for his house. So the fact is that we have a recession. People are suffering. This is a way to make sure that those who are doing the best, who are actually being quite prosperous, are helping to invest in our state and our education.
Bill Gates Sr. told us that he supports this. He's one of the main drivers behind it. What's your sense of high-income people affected by this, Matt McIlwain? Do you think they oppose this?
Well, I think that basically everybody that I've talked to, and again, we have a very broad-based nonpartisan coalition that opposes this because they see that this takes an incredible risk for our state in terms of job. It may be a small number of businesses that create the jobs and create the economic wealth and create the prosperity for our state, create the innovative ecosystem, but those are the people that all the jobs go to. It's not just the folks that own those businesses. And so at the end of the day, we think it's a broad-based, nonpartisan coalition that's going to ultimately defeat 1098.
I'm going to have to end it right there, but this is just the beginning of a long conversation we're going to be having between now and November. And you just heard Matt McIlwain from the Madrona Venture Group. He's a managing director there speaking against Initiative 1098. And John Burbank in the studio with us, also executive director of the Economic Opportunity Institute, an economic policy think tank in Seattle. I encourage you to find out more about these issues. It's going to be a major issue that you'll be facing this November. So check it out. It's Initiative 1098 on your ballot, and it would place an income tax on the wealthiest 3% of people in our state. From KUOW 94.9 Seattle, I'm Ross Reynolds.